Okay, so we are holding on Daf Chaf Daled, and um, the Gemara that we've been learning is a long continuation. Uh, Basically, started with this discussion of a sukkah that has walls made by an animal, and the animal is being used as the walls of a sukkah. And created. There was a whole machlokes: is Reb Meir, Reb Yehuda, is this a kosher sukkah or is it not a kosher sukkah? And this was on page 23a. It's the Gemara started there with Asa lebehema doifen lasukkah, where he made the animal a wall for the sukkah. And there you had Reb Meir saying that it is not a kosher sukkah, and Rabbi Yehuda said it is a kosher sukkah. And that led us to the question of what was the reason that Rabbi Meir says that the sukkah is not kosher. What could be the problem? Well, so you don't need kosher schach for walls. For schach, you need kosher schach. For the walls, seem anything is good. So the Gemara mentioned two reasons. One was that we're afraid the animal that's being used for the wall might run away or it might die. So those were the two understandings. The Gemara went through a whole discussion of what the difference between the two reasons are. And even if you hold it might die, aren't you also afraid it might run away? If you're afraid it might run away, why aren't you afraid it might die? The Gemara went through these issues. The Gemara also talked about what do you do about the empty space in between the legs of the animal? It seems like it's not a solid wall. The Gemara mentioned that you fill it up. The Gemara talked about what do you do if the animal crouches down? Well, the animal is tied up, and even though it's tied up, but if it dies, you will still have an issue that it could still somehow contract and won't be sufficient to make a kosher wall if it dies. Even though it's tied, that it can't crouch down, but it still could somehow get smaller. And I'm not sure if it means that it physically contracts after it dies, or it sort of falls a little. I mean, the term used miskavet, it sounds like it contracts, like gets smaller.
It's rigor mortis. Rigor mortis causes rigor mortis is contraction.
Contraction. But it seems like that's what it is. In other words, that they're assuming that the actual animal will be held up to the full height through the ropes, and it's just the fact that it'll contract will make it less tall. But so that's what it seems like. Yeah, correct. Thank you, Moshe. But anyway, bottom line is that there's reason to suspect that it won't be the correct size, and that would be a reason to say it's not a kosher wall. That would be one of the understandings. Of course, the other understanding is that we're nervous it's going to run away. So if it was tied, you don't really have that problem of running away. And then, of course, you have Rabbi Yehuda's view that says a sukkah can have an animal as a wall. In other words, an animal could be used as the wall of a sukkah. So we have Reb Meir with different explanations of Reb Meir, but then we have Reb Yehuda's view that says you could use an animal for a wall. The Gemara, I must say, is a little vague. What is Reb Yehuda? What is the case where Reb Yehuda says it's kosher? In other words, it would be nice to understand what the case of the argument really is. The understanding of Reb Meir keeps switching what the case is based on the opinion of Reb, based on the understanding of Reb Meir, which I mean to say, if you say the reason is we're afraid it's going to die, so the case could be that it's tied. It's the animal is tied, but it's going to contract. And that would be the scenario where Reb Meir says is halacha that it's going to be a kosher it's that it's not going to be a kosher wall because it's contracts. So it's tied down. There's an animal. It's tied down, and it actually can't even crouch because it's tied. But what might happen is that it's going to contract. So therefore, it won't be sufficient for a wall. So that would be Reb Meir's reason why it's not kosher, even though now it's kosher. But because it might die, we have to suspect it that it's gonna. Okay, so we're being extra careful. It might die, you won't know, and you'll think it's kosher. We say it's not even kosher now, even though it's alive, even though it barks. You know what I mean? It's making noises. Now it's not kosher. Rabbinic laws. These are rabbinic laws. A decree that it might die, you won't know. Therefore, we're going to say it's not kosher. But according to the other opinion, that's not the case. According to the opinion that we're afraid it's going to run away, it can't be talking about this because it can't run away. It's tied down. So he's not afraid it's going to die, and he's afraid that it is going to run away, but that can't be the case. So he must be talking about a case where it's not tied down, and therefore it's going to run away. But then the question would be, so what is Rabbi Yehuda really holding? Why is Rabbi Yehuda permitting such a sukkah that the wall could run away? In other words, the opinion that says that that we're afraid it's gonna die, he must be talking about that it's tied down. Otherwise, he would be nervous that it's gonna run away. So he has to learn because he's also afraid that it's going to run away. So therefore, therefore, it's tied down. He's not afraid it's going to run. That must be the case. But the other opinion will hold, no, it's not tied down, and therefore you're afraid it's going to run away. But then what does Rabbi Yehuda hold? Rabbi Yehuda argues on Reb Meir, and he says it's a kosher sukkah. Even though it's going to run away, the fact is now it's not. We're not afraid that it's going to run away. It just seems surprising that the wall is so temporary. I mean, it could run away in a second. Animals, how long do they have their attention span? How long can they handle staying in one place?
Well, usually, Rabbi, there's some other animal that they see something, another animal, and then they run after it. I mean, that's what animals do.
Right. And if they don't see another animal, you think they're just going to sit there? They're going to look around for another animal, probably.
Right, exactly.
Depends how old it is, but depends how lazy it is. But yeah, but it definitely seems surprising how Rabbi Yehuda's learning. So, the fact that the Gemara puts it together as if it's an argument makes it sound like there must be a case that Reb Meir would say his din. In that same case, Reb Yehuda would say his din. So it definitely seems like there's a real argument here, Reb Meir and Reb Yehuda. In fact, that's the source of the whole Gemara. So it seems that Reb Yehuda is being very lenient in saying that this is considered a kosher wall, even though seemingly, if you think about it, it's not exactly. I mean, we could say that Rabbi Yehuda is not afraid of the animal dying. That you could say. So it's tied down, but that would be understandable, because who says you have to be nervous that an animal's going to die? But maybe it's not so, it's not so common. It doesn't, it lasts many, many years before it dies. So why should you be suspecting that it's going to die? So that could be, a good understanding. But if you want to say it's not going to run away, or Meir is nervous that's going to run away, he's nervous, he's not nervous that's going to run away. I mean, how could you not be nervous that it's going to run away? That would be definitely a surprising thing. In other words, if you think about it in the laws of mechitza, how could you consider this a mechitza, a wall? Like if we compare it to the case of the boat, on the boat, so you have a sukkah. So you say, oh, if this sukkah would be on regular property, regular dry land, it would be solid. Okay, now it's on in the ocean. it's still a solid wall if it would be somewhere else. It happens to be here on a boat. Okay, we could consider it a sukkah. It's a wall. Why? Because if it was in a normal city, it would be a wall. It happens not to be able to handle the winds of the ocean. Fine, but still, you call it a sukkah. Here, this type of wall, it seems very extreme leniency to allow a wall which is made of an animal to be considered that it's a sukkah. I mean, the animal's gonna, if you say it's tied down into such an extent, fine. But how is that? But if you don't learn that it's tied down, so you have to, you're nervous that it's going to run away. So
Rabbi,
what
maybe
would Rabbi Yehuda's view be?
maybe
Yes.
that it's the older it is, the more likely it's going to die. But the older it is, the less likely it's going to run away because it's just old and lazy. So maybe there's a like a
So we must be
like
talking about an
one or the
old and
other.
lazy animal. An
Yeah, old
old,
lazy animal. It's maybe it's gonna die. Run away, not so much because
so
it
old.
just sits there.
Rabbi,
Yeah. And then the other question is, what about the crouch thing? We sort of answered the case that the animal can't crouch because it's tied down. But if it's tied down, then why aren't you nervous? Why would he be nervous that's going to run away? In other words, the one that's not nervous of running away, if you're not nervous, if you are nervous that it's going to run away, so Rameir would say it's not kosher. It would seem like it would be the same thing. He's nervous that it's going to crouch down. Why would he use the words that he's nervous that it's going to run away? He should say it. He's nervous that it's going to crouch.
Rabbi,
I
is there
don't
a
know. I
time
don't know
value?
what's more common. It's more common for an animal to crouch down or to run away. Both of them seem to be both problematic. They're going to ruin your sukkah. And but I guess you could say maybe running away is just as common as crouching, maybe more. Okay, so let's say that's why
Rabbi,
he's also nervous that it's going to crouch down, or it's gonna run away. So Rabbi Yehuda is saying it's kosher, even though it could crouch down, or it could run away. It's still going to be kosher the way it is because now it's a kosher. How could it be a kosher wall? It's a wall. It's there. It's so because it has a chashivas as an animal. It's alive. It has a certain significance that gives it a significance. Maybe. I mean, it just seems very surprising. Yes, Moshe.
is there a time value for a behemoth to be used as a wall? Because I'm going to tell you something. Any animal that's held that's held for any length of time without movement, it can be prone to getting pneumonia. A horse, a ferret, a horse that's injured in a race, for example, they put it in suspension, usually in a stable, and the horse usually dies after a period of time because they can't. It comes down with pneumonia and they usually die. So what I'm wondering is what's the time value for a behemoth or any kind of an animal be held in suspension as being used as a wall? That's what because otherwise that animal is going to die, probably get pneumonia, or it's going to try to bite it itself and it's going to shake the rest of the sukkah, to try to escape. It's going to try to, if it's tied down, it's going to try to bite at the ropes or try to escape.
Right.
It's just not going to stay stable. There's going to be
how long does it take till it catches pneumonia, and how long after it catches pneumonia does it take to die?
Well,
good question.
I mean, I'm not sure. I'm not really sure of that, but I'm just saying though that you don't know how sick the animal is. I mean, if it's got a problem with its mum, if it's got a mum in its lungs or something, let's
say it's healthy. Let's just say it's healthy. It's old, maybe.
Well,
just for kiddush. That's all you need to stand still for kiddush. That's all.
I don't know. That's something I'm not aware of. But I mean, it is possible though that if you're keeping it for through Hol Moed, and and it's staying in one space, one spot. I mean, I think that it would probably come down with something, because it can't stay in one spot for any, for that length of time,
Yep.
So, I mean, the understanding is that somehow Rabbi Yehuda allows it till it runs away. It's kosher. That's the understanding of the Gemara, that till it runs away, it's kosher. Now it's there. It's a kosher wall. I'm just trying to understand why you would say that this would be kosher wall, but if it can't stand by winds, if winds would knock it down, then it wouldn't be a kosher wall. In other words, this is a kosher wall, even though it might go away. I guess the shot is that maybe the fact that it will still be standing, the fact that it goes that it's standing, okay, it'll be a moving wall, but it's still a wall. In other words, a sukkah that gets knocked over by the wind, that's not even a wall. It's going to get knocked over. Animal is standing. Okay, it might move. That doesn't mean it's not a wall. It's still going to be a wall, and that would maybe make it considered to be according to Rabbi Yehuda, a kosher sukkah. Sukkah is temporary. Fine. He holds. Oh no, Rabbi Yehuda holds sukkah. Rabbi Yehuda was of the opinion
There is keva.
that it's keva. Right? That's what we had before. Yehuda said same. Yehuda says Ameni Cholam was psula. One of the reasons was Bnei Chain La Keva. Yehuda holds Sukadiris Keva Behinon. And that was from the beginning, first Mishnah. So then if he's really of the opinion that has to be Keva, it's really surprising. Anyway, this is something to work out and figure out how Rabbi Yehuda would be of the opinion that this sukkah is a kosher sukkah. Maybe does machshir this sukkah. Very surprising. So now the Gemara had mentioned that the Gemara had mentioned that this is connected to another case, another few cases. The Gemara connected these ideas about being not worried about Misa. Are we worried? Are we not worried that the animal's going to die? So Reb Meir seemed to have this understanding that they're afraid it's going to die. The Gemara connected it to other cases where we find at least one way of looking at the other cases is that Reb Meir is of the lenient opinion that he's not nervous going to die. And there he had a case of Kayan's married to an Israelite woman, and Kayan travels, halach l'mdinas hayam, and there we said that she's still allowed to eat truma, and the understanding of Abaye is that's Reb Meir, that we're not afraid that he's going to die. The other opinion, the other case was a case where we have a brisa, the person gives a get a moment before he passes away, and immediately she is prohibited to eat truma. There we are worried that he's going to die, and that's Rabbi Yehuda's view. Rabbi Yehuda's nervous. So we find the exact opposite of what we're thinking now. We're thinking now that Rabbi Meir is the one who's nervous and the animal's going to die. Here we have the case of where we find Rabbi Meir is not nervous about dying. Rabbi Yehuda is the one who's nervous. And then we brought a brisa that proves that Rabbi Meir is not nervous. And the case of the brisa was with this wineskin. The wineskin, where Reb Meir says you could separate Meiser on Shabbos, not exactly separated, but you make a formula where you're doing this. It's called the Brera, where you say that I'm going to separate it later, and it should take effect retroactively. So I'm not allowed to do it now, but I'm going to do it later. And what I do later will reveal that this was the truma all along, and it was separated retroactively. And so Reb Meir seems to follow. He says you're allowed to do that. So he is not nervous that the wineskin is going to crack. And then we have Reb Yehuda, who's nervous that the wineskin is going to crack. So that seems to prove that Reb Meir is not nervous, and Reb Yehuda is the one who's nervous about death. Rashi says an interesting thing here. Rashi says that Reb Yehuda, who's nervous that the wineskin is going to crack, for sure he should be nervous that a person could die. Rashi doesn't just compare the two. Rashi makes it like it's a kal v'chomer. If you're nervous that a wineskin will crack, Reb Yehuda, for sure he should be nervous that a person could die, and she can't eat truma anymore. It's an interesting kal v'chomer, especially because the Gemara says in Baba Kama that a person has mazel, and therefore it's less. You don't suspect as much that a person will die as an animal will as a vessel could break. A vessel to break is much more would be more expected. To say that a person's gonna die, that's not as that's not as what does the Gemara say? It says Adam Islay Maslo. Person normally won't it's hard for a person to get damaged and wounded and die because he has mazel, like there's certain heavenly angels that are protecting him, so to speak. He's got luck. He's got angels, advocates that are protecting him. So there's reason to say that maybe a vessel could break much more than a person would die. So what's Rashi mean? If you want to say if you're afraid here, he should be afraid there. You want to compare, fine. Rashi makes it like a kal v'chomer. Like if you're afraid that the wineskin is going to crack, for sure you got to be afraid of a person's going to die. The commentaries ask this question. Yes, Ezra.
We know that an individual is going to die. Hashem has basically told us no more than 120 years. So that's a fact. It's not something that it's possible that it's going to happen. He's going to die, period. So I don't understand this.
But how do you know when the next second, from 1 second to the next second, unless the closer you are to 120 is what matters, maybe. I don't know,
but the fact of the matter is, you're not going to live forever, so therefore you are going to die. So the point that's being made over here is that just as one can happen, the other one can also happen. So there's no reason why people should say no, that's not possible.
So you would say that it's more probable that a person will die than a wineskin.
No, I say it's just the probability of it happening are exactly the same.
Exactly the same. So you also have a question on Rashi, because Rashi makes it like this is more probable, and according to you, it should be equal. And the commentaries ask a little more than what you're asking. They say it's even less probable because a person has mazel. So you're asking a good question on Rashi. The commentaries ask it a little stronger. They say that a person has mazel, so therefore
Rabbi, my commentary is on those who have the commentary that say that because they have mazel, therefore they can it's not possible that they're going to die in comparison to the breaking of
So you're wondering how they could even say so.
I don't agree with them. I think both of them
let me tell you,
are basically the same.
Okay, I hear what you're saying. But it could be that there's a way to answer your question by the fact that you're emphasizing the fact that a person is going to ultimately pass away. The issue that we are dealing with here is not if a person will pass away. It's, did the person pass away now? Should we assume that the person passed away now? Should we assume? So what you're giving statistics that a person is, and based on statement that a person can live 120 years and so on, the fact that you're emphasizing is not exactly it doesn't exactly fit with what we are discussing, in a sense, to be able to prove that we have to be more nervous of a person passing away than and then that, because what you're proving is more about the fact that a person will pass away. And what we are talking about, what the Gemara is talking about, is more, should we be concerned now that the person died? He's not 120. Should we be concerned that this Kohen passed away and his wife can no longer eat truma? Should we assume that now, any given day? Not a case where the person is 119 and a half. Well, so in that case, so which one is more which one makes more sense to happen? So Rashi implies,
Rabbi, at any point in time, there's a 50-50 chance that you're going to pass away.
Okay. So, but based on
there's a 50-50 chance that something will break.
Right.
But so therefore, from that standpoint, there's probabilities.
Right.
I'm not talking about what's going to happen in 20.
Why is it a 50-50 chance?
You either die or you don't die.
No, it doesn't work
I
that
don't know if
way.
it's so simple.
No.
There is, first of all, statistics show different ages could be more susceptible in health situations, in environment, and stress, and the person's way of life, and all different types of things.
It's not a yes or no.
It's very hard to make such a automatic again, I'm not a mathematician.
If you say yes or no is 50-50, then everything is 50-50.
That's correct.
No.
Any yes/no questions?
There's a matter of point of time and a period of time.
Right.
A point of time and a period. They're both different.
Anyway, I just think, Ezra, if you think of life in that way, it's like you can never invest in anything because there's a 50-50% chance. So don't invest. I mean, it's always 50-50%. I mean, something might work, something might not, but 50-50. Yeah. I mean, if you want to be so black and white, you could always say it's 50-50. It would be very foolish for me to invest.
Okay.
What?
No, I think it's the opposite. I think it's either 0 or 100. Either it didn't happen or it happened. It's either 100%.
That's what they
0%.
use that's what they use for probabilities. When they get into quantum physics and they're talking probabilities, 1 is the perfect answer because 1 is it happened.
Yeah, but
and everything under that.
What's the probability that the sun is going to come up tomorrow? Give me a statistic.
That we don't know. You have to look at star life and whatever it is.
Anyway, bottom line is, okay, so let me tell you what the commentary's answer to this question. Again, the question is based on another Gemara. The Gemara says that a person has mazel, which gives the impression and the understanding that a person has more reason that he should live and be safe than a vessel. A vessel doesn't have the angels protecting it, and a person does, so to speak, have what's called mazel, which are protecting the person. And that would be a reason to think that, so how could Rashi say that if we're concerned about a vessel breaking, for sure we should be concerned about a person? So the commentary give 2 answers. Yes, Dov.
A person, Rabbi Meir is saying that everybody is destined to pass away. Therefore, that's more common. But not every keli is going to break. I've got a whole cupboards full of dishes, and I
heirloom china.
I can't say, well, they're all destined to break. I don't think any of them are destined to break, or maybe 1 out of 10 or 1 out of 25.
So you're on
So
Are
I
you
have
on
20
Ezra's team, David? You're on Ezra's
I'm-
team?
I'm sort of on Rabbi Meir's
Oh.
team.
Uh-huh.
No.
Right.
Ezra's team, I'm not on. Ezra's
The
team is
question is
saying
at the
everybody's
next
25,
point in
everybody's
time.
50-50 where they're going to pass away tomorrow. No,
No, because
I don't buy that.
Uh-huh.
if you pick a point in time, like this next
Right.
second, right?
Uh-huh.
Between now and the next second, and it's you can't use that probability because we're not saying the person's never gonna die. Eventually the person's gonna die. But the question is within now and the 10 seconds from now, is the person gonna die? That's a
Right.
whole different
know,
probability. It's not the
So
same.
that was,
I'm-
I think,
I'm
I think
going
I
for an
mentioned that
actuarial.
idea. Right. I think I
No,
mentioned that idea. Yeah.
I'm arguing which is more common. It's more common that a person passes away than that a dish is going to break.
Right.
Could be.
Okay. Even though the Gemara says that a person has mazel, but you're just saying practically speaking, people die more often than dishes break. You're talking from a practical perspective from your experience in life.
I don't mean dishes break. Dishes break, but I'm saying
A wineskin,
a dish, a specific
a
dish.
specific
'Cause
dish and a
you're
specific
saying,
person. When we
right,
talk about
it's
a specific dish and a specific person, there's more chance that the person than the dish.
But that's
Uh-huh.
not what they're
right
Okay.
because everybody dies, but not every dish breaks.
Okay. So that's one way of looking at it. Okay.
But the
I guess
Gemara is talking about people in general. So it's not A and A. They're talking about
uh-huh.
is and people.
But it's saying every person has mazel. Every person has mazel. Each
But
person has mazel,
so
and
Rabbi
vessels don't have mazel.
So Rabbi Meir is saying it's more common because everybody passes away, but not every dish is going to
Uh-huh.
destined to break.
Right. Gotcha. So so one of the answers they give is somewhat along the lines of this idea that a person is sort of not in your you're not in your own hands to decide if you're gonna if a person's gonna live or not. But a vessel could be protected. You could keep it in your closet or something, and it could be watched. And but you can't have a shomer on a person on a person. They can't so there's no way to protect a person from passing away, so to speak. And by a vessel, it could be much more protected in by you. You could protect it. You could keep it safe. You could have a shomer. So ultimately, it would sort of be along these lines that it's more common, or it's more protectable. A person is less protectable, and a vessel is more protected. Therefore, it's if you're concerned about the breaking of a wineskin, for sure you should be concerned about the passing of a person. Just because, even though a person does have advocates in mazel, but the fact is that you can't really protect yourself, but you could protect the vessel. So there is more reason to be concerned, I guess, along the lines of practically speaking. It is you could say that practically speaking, the passing of a person happens more than a vessel or something like that. Now they give another point, and that is that when we deal with regard to the tevel, to this, we're dealing with regard to this tithing, and the point is that when it comes to tithing something that you bought, that is only a prohibition rabbinically, because when you buy something, you do need to tithe it. When you buy wine, you have to tithe it, but the tithing is not biblical. If it's your own produce, then you would need to tithe it biblically. But here we're dealing with something that you bought. Being that you bought it, it's rabbinically obligated in being tithed. However, in the case of truma, in the case of a woman eating truma, a woman who's not a kohen eating truma, that's a biblical prohibition. So what Rashi means is not what's more probable, that a person will pass away versus an animal break, but he's saying that for sure we should be concerned about the passing away of a person because that's a biblical law. If you're concerned about the rabbinic law of the wineskin, in other words, so it's not about what's more probable to happen, it's more about the law of being concerned. If we are concerned about a rabbinic law regarding the breaking of the wineskin, for sure we should be concerned about a biblical law of the case of passing away. So it's not, oh, this one's maybe more probable, that one's less. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the fact that if we're concerned about a rabbinic law, that's for sure we should be concerned about the biblical law. One happens to be the breaking of a vessel. The other one happens to be about the passing away of a person. But that's the understanding of that's the way to understand Rashi. Okay. Anyway, so those are the ways the commentaries give to explain what Rashi means here. Really, it's interesting that Rashi even says this. Rashi could have just said, if you're concerned here, you'd be concerned there. Like, who says you have to make a kal v'chomer out of it? They're similar. You're concerned about the breaking of a vessel, be concerned. Rashi makes like a kal v'chomer, like, oh, if you're concerned here, for sure, you have to be concerned there. Just say they're similar. You're concerned here, you're concerned there. If the Reb Meir is concerned here, if Reb Yehuda is concerned there, be concerned there. You know, it's interesting that Rashi adds that. I see on the side, I have a girsa, I have that in the original version of Rashi, there's a version that says v'hu hadin, not v'kolshke. V'hu hadin would mean similarly. In other words, along the lines of what I'm saying, it's surprising Rashi makes a kal v'chomer out of it. He could just say similarly, just like here you're concerned, here you're also concerned. But our girsa, our text in Rashi has it that it is a what do you call it? An a priori argument. Okay, so this was the discussion of Reb Meir versus Reb Yehuda. Who's the one who's more concerned about passing? Who's not concerned? And so originally the Gemara understood that Reb Meir is the one who's concerned about passing. Then we came up with this whole new thing that no, it's Reb Meir is not concerned about the passing. He's not concerned about the breaking of the wineskin, and it's Reb Yehuda who's the one who's concerned. Now that sounds good, except for except for one problem, which the Gemara says on page 24a that's going to make a contradiction now. Pasha de Reb Meir ad Reb Meir. Now you're going to have a problem. So if it's Reb Meir, you switch around the names. The Gemara wants to say, and Abai really says it's Reb Meir who's concerned. Reb Yehuda is not concerned. Okay, so everything is good except for one brisa. There's one brisa that doesn't fit with this whole new way of looking at it. The brisa is this case of the bekias hanoid, wineskin that's cracking. That case doesn't seem to fit because we basically have Reb Meir's view that he's concerned about passing, and he's not concerned about the cracking of that it's going to crack the bekias hanoid, the wineskin will crack. So the Gemara says, well, that's not such a problem. Reb Meir is concerned about death. And he says, but when it comes to a wineskin, that you're not so worried about because you could watch it, you could protect it. So in a certain sense, this answer that the Gemara gives, that Reb Meir is more concerned about he's concerned more about passing than about bekias hanoid, was the logic that Rashi used earlier, that in the opinion of Reb Yehuda, that if he's concerned about the bekias hanoid, if he's concerned about the wineskin cracking, for sure he should be concerned about the passing. That's based on the Gemara. Knows that answer that the commentaries give is based on this little piece of Gemara. Because the Gemara says that if you could explain Reb Meir, that he would say, well, I'm more worried about, Reb Meir clearly says this. He says, I'm worried about passing of a human being, but I'm not worried about the cracking of a utensil, of a wineskin, because that could be protected. You could give it to a shomer. Someone's watching it. Someone's protecting it. It's in a safe place. So basically, Reb Meir you could say in one place he's concerned about about something going awry, and in the other case, he's not concerned. Now, the Gemara says, but what about Rabbi Yehuda? Why would he say that he's concerned about the breaking of a wineskin, and he's not concerned about someone passing away? So here the Gemara has a question. What are you gonna? How are you gonna reconcile Rabbi Yehuda? And on this, the Gemara says no. He's not. He's actually not concerned about either. It's not that he's concerned that the wineskin will crack. He holds that you don't say brera. You can't do a retroactive separation of. You can't do a retroactive separation of tithings, of separate of the stuff that goes to the kohen, the portions that go to the kohen and the Levi, and the portion Meiser Sheni. You can't do such a separation and make it go retroactively. It's a discussion in the commentaries. What does those that don't hold of brera, they don't hold of this? What exactly do they hold? Do they hold that you can't do the separation at all and it doesn't work at all? Or do they hold it works, but it doesn't work retroactively? In other words, Reb Meir holds yesh brera. And this is a very interesting topic that goes throughout the Talmud. You find it brought in many different places about are we allowed to assume something? And which actually brings up an interesting question. Like, for example, if you find out something later, does it work retroactively? I'll give you an example that I just spoke to a Rav. I just spoke to a Rav about a certain scenario. He said it might be dependent on brera. What was the case? A few years ago, I gave out shalach manas. We have about 300 shalach manases with a mug. And the mug held all these different things. And I was nervous that the people who are going to get it, of course, not everyone, but some of the people are not going to toivel the mug. So I went and toiveled over 300 mugs.
No.
And I figured, I'm all set. I look at what a mitzvah I did, right? I thought I'm doing this great mitzvah to toiveling all the mugs. And now no one's going to do anything wrong and everyone's going to be fine. So now I just found out, I saw the discussion in halacha that you can't toivel something that you're going to give away. Unless you know exactly who you're giving it to and you're having them in mind that you're giving it to that person.
Oh boy.
It comes out that I gave 300 mugs, and it seems like it wasn't correct. Okay, listen, mistakes happen.
But Rabbi, were they glass or ceramic?
The ceramic.
So even that's a little different.
It's a little more lenient, right? Because it's ceramic, there's room to say that it's exempt from being toivel, ceramic. The only thing is that it has some type of glaze on it. So normally with toivel, I have to speak to a Rav who understands this. Normally they say to toivel it, right? If it's glazed. I don't know. They say the glaze is glass.
In other words, without a bracha, no bracha.
Without a bracha.
Right.
I guess it's without a bracha. But I'm not sure if this is even true, that the glaze is really glass. That's what they claim, that the glaze is like glass. It'd be glass. When it cracks, it doesn't hurt. You don't get cut on it. I don't know. They claim the glaze is glass and therefore it would be obligated rabbinically, or at least, Anyway, bottom line is, I told the Rav, and I have to speak to other big Rabbanim about this. I told the Rav that I'm not sure if that halacha applies in this scenario, because I had an extra, I bought extras, and I planned, I don't have any mugs in my house. I planned the extras I'm going to end up using myself. So I told the Rav, so it comes out that I toiveled 300 mugs, and I had in mind myself. Really, some of them I'm giving away and some I'm keeping. So if so, maybe it should be considered like I toivel them for myself, and after I decided I'm giving some away, I'm taking some myself. So it's really like I toivel them for myself. It should be kosher. He told me maybe it's dependent on yesh breira. The ones that you toiveled, the ones that you ended up taking afterwards, it's retroactively revealed that those are the ones that you toivel for yourself. But the ones you gave out are retroactively revealed that those were meant for other people. So he said, and because it's rabbinic, he says, yesh breira, we say such a thing. So he said it comes out that it could be the ones that you toivel for yourself are fine, and the ones that you toiveled for other people are a problem. So I'm in the midst of deciding if I have to speak to another Rav who, knows the depth of this. But this is an interesting case of breira where you see the concept of how you could look at something retroactively and say, well, it comes out that what you actually did then is revealed later on, and it comes out that retroactively it was a good toivel. It comes out because retroactively those were the ones I kept for myself. Anyway, bottom line is that breira is a topic that is discussed in numerous Gemaras, especially Eruvin, Dorim. It comes up in different tractates. And in any event, here so we're dealing with the concept of separating tithings and on Shabbos and making it work as if it was when later on, when you separate them, it'll be considered that it was done retroactively. And of course, I mentioned to you before when we learned this, that there are issues of separating, even though you're not actually separating now, you're separating later, but it's done retroactively. It could be an issue of on Shabbos. And according to Tosfos, this is talking about where it's Erev, where it's Shabbos bein hashmashos. It's really not Shabbos mamish. It's not exactly on Shabbos now. It's really a time that's in between. It's a bein hashmashos time. And therefore, it's not a problem. And you ended up you separated, but you separated. You didn't actually decide which part of it is the truma and the meiser. Which part of your wine is it the north side or the south side? You didn't do that now. Later on, after Shabbos, you decide which part of it is the truma, which part is the meiser. Is it on the northern side is the truma, and on the eastern side is the meiser? Whatever it is, you decide after Shabbos, and it's considered as if it was decided. It was decided beforehand, and therefore, whatever you drank on Shabbos was not an issue of drinking wine that didn't have the separation taken, because later on, when you separate, it becomes revealed what part was the truma, what part is the meiser, and therefore you didn't drink untithed produce. So that's the case of breira. So the question is, if what Reb Yehuda holds, when he holds that you're not allowed to do this, does he hold that separation, when you make this the formula and you say this, it actually means that you've separated, because later on you're saying that I am going to separate later. What was the term? The two lugin that I'm going to separate, they are truma. Now, does that work now? It takes effect now, except the only thing Rabbi Yehuda says is, but what doesn't take effect is which two are the truma. No, it takes effect what you're saying, but we don't say retroactively when you choose which two, it goes back to now. But it does take effect that you've now separated two. It's just the problem is the two are mixed into the whole thing, and therefore whatever you drink might be truma. Later on, you'll decide which two liters are truma. Later on, it'll be okay. But now, what you drink now is not okay. And so therefore, Rabbi Yehuda doesn't go for this formula. Or does Rabbi Yehuda say it means nothing? Whatever you say, your whole formula means zero, and whatever you said, doesn't take effect because you can't separate truma now. So you can't say the two that I'll separate later are truma. You can't say even such a thing doesn't take effect. It doesn't even. So that's a discussion in the commentaries. The discussion in how that Rashi and Chulin and the and other commentaries of Rabbeinu Hananel Taisvis, there's discussion in the Rishonim how to learn the one that holds you don't say brera. Now the conclusion in halacha is that rabbinic laws we do say brera. You can say brera. That's why I was telling you in the case of my mugs, there's room to say if it's true. I have to speak to another Rav, but if it's true that that you do say brera there, it would make sense because it's a rabbinic law. It's a rabbinic will be rabbinically because earthenware doesn't need to be toivel, but if it's glazed, then rabbinically, then it would be seemingly glass, and glass is rabbinically obligated in toiveling. Anyway, bottom line is I have to get back to you about the mug case, but this is the halacha that something that it's biblical. We actually don't say brera. We follow the other opinion of like Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, yes, David.
And there's an interesting note. Can I share the screen?
If you feel it's interesting, well, I believe you. Share the screen. The issue of retroactive clarification appears in several areas of halakha and is linked to a number of related topics. The fundamental question is, to what extent can retroactive significance be attributed to actions? Can an action performed in the present take effect in the past? In the words of the sages, the matter was revealed retroactively. The halachic analysis indicates that opinions on this matter range from those who completely negate the principle of retroactive clarification to those who apply it in all cases. The ruling is that in matters of Torah law, there is no retroactive clarification, while in matters of rabbinic law, there is retroactive clarification. Okay, well, I guess that's pretty much what we talked about. Thank you, David.
Looks like according to the Gemara, though, it's Rabbi Yehuda is that his opinion is he never accepts it ever.
He doesn't go for it, right? Well, that's that.
No matter what.
Yeah, well, that's the understanding that these three rabbis, they're oyser, they prohibit it, and basically they hold you don't say brera. There definitely are opinions ain brera, and there's opinions of yesh brera, and it's only halacha says that when it comes to biblical law, we follow this way. When it comes to rabbinic law, we follow the other way. There's discussion of why that is. Why is that when it comes to a biblical law that we say, when it comes to a biblical law, we'll say ein brera. When it comes to rabbinic law, we say yesh brera. One of the understandings of that is because we are want to do a chumrah. We want to be machmir. We want to, when it's biblical. There's a rule that when anything biblical, you have to be extra strict. So in such a scenario, we say ein brera. You can't say retroactively because we want to be extra strict. And rabbinic law, you can be lenient. So we'll say yesh brera. The only thing is, if you follow that understanding, there are scenarios where saying yesh brera will end up being a leniency. So in cases where it turns out that that's a leniency, it ends up that the halacha would switch when it comes to rabbinic law and biblical law, because it's all about being extra strict. So in a case where it's a leniency, then maybe you wouldn't follow that. The other understanding is that yesh brera is a rule by a rabbinic law, and ein brera is by a biblical law, and it's not because of suffix, not because we're not sure and we have to be machmir. In any event, so this is the discussion here about brera or ein brera. That's at least the way the Gemara understands it here. And then the Gemara wants to prove that this doesn't really fit, because Rabbi Yehuda seems to tell Reb Meir about this problem of the breaking of the wineskin. It sounds like Reb Yehuda is concerned about the breaking, because he even has a dialogue with Reb Meir, and he sort of questions him based on the fact that, aren't you nervous that maybe it's going to break? And how do you allow such a thing to say this formula? There might not be any wine left. You're going to end up causing a big sin. In the end, people are going to drink tevel. They're going to drink stuff that was untithed. And so Rabbi Yehuda, so you see that Rabbi Yehuda seems to be concerned about this. And the Gemara answers that no, he's not concerned on his own turf. He's talking to Reb Meir on Reb Meir's truth. He's telling you, you should be concerned about this. I'm not concerned. I have no issue. You that you that hold a breira and you that are nervous of death, you should be concerned about that it's going to break. According to me, I don't hold this in the first place. There's no breira. It doesn't help to say such a formula. But according to you, you could say such a formula, but still you should be nervous. So he answers back, that if it breaks, then we'll deal with it. We'll have to see what to do, but we don't have to be concerned about it. Okay, and that's oh no, we actually did one more little piece over here, and then we said that now Rabbi Yehuda is not concerned about the passing of a person. What about the case of Yom Kippur, where he says you have to have a second wife for the Kohen Gadol prepared? So the Gemara answered that that's only regarding kapara, regarding atonement, that since the whole Klal Yisrael, the whole Jewish people is dependent on this atonement, we got to make sure that we have to make sure that the atonement is good. So he's extra concerned in the case of Yom Kippur. Normally, he's not afraid someone's going to pass away, but he says here we got to take an extra step. That's where we got up to. And now we got 2 minutes left. Let's try to do a little more. We're on page 24a, Bein Lamanda Amar Shema Thomas. We're 12 lines up from the bottom of the page of 24a. Bein Lamanda Amar Shema Thomas, Bein Lamanda Amar Shema Tivrach, Midaraisa Mechitza Ma'alye. Rabbanon Hu Degazru. Says, if you learn these two reasons that explain Reb Meir, that they said, why an animal's wall for a sukkah is not good? Either the animal might die or the animal might run away. According to both, actually, the wall is a good wall, but biblically, but it's because we're afraid something's going to happen. So therefore, we have to make a decree and we make a rule that it's not going to be a good wall. We make a rule, we're afraid it's going to run away, so we prohibit. So it's only rabbinic. Ella, the Gemara says, Ella meyata l'Reb Meir. But if that's so, that it's only a rabbinic law, so how does Reb Meir also consider animals not eligible to be a goylel? Ella meyata l'Reb Meir. If that's so, why would Reb Meir? It's only a rabbinic thing about it. Animals really, usable for many things. But for a wall, for a sukkah, we have a decree where we make an extra rabbinic decree. Really, it's usable as a mechitza. So why isn't it usable as a goylo? Goylo, we translated 3 translations for goylo. Goylo, we said, is either a cover for a coffin. It's either the top part of the coffin. It's either or it could be the covering of a cave, like the thing that closes in the cave that they would bury people in, or the goylel. There is a pshat that it actually means the monument above the grave. But basically, a goylel has a special law that it's tamei, just like the grave, just like the corpse. And so this law of a goylel, what happens if you put an animal there? And the practical side of it, the reason why a person would put an animal there is they just buried someone and they don't have the cover and there's an animal. So why don't you put the animal there in the meantime until you get something else for the goylel? So they're going to put the animal there. And the question is if the animal could be considered a goylel. So the Gemara says, according to this, that an animal is good for a wall, for a sukkah. It's just rabbinically we say you can't use it. But biblically it's good. So an animal should actually make, if you use an animal as a goylel, it should actually be tamei. You want to tell me rabbinic laws change things? Okay, but biblically, this should be a real cover for a coffin. In the meantime, it's a cover. It's biblically considered a cover. It should be tamei. It should be matame. Other things like a goylel is matame. Special law of goylel that the cover is matame things, makes things tamei, makes things impure. Why did we learn in a Mishnah? Rabbi Yehuda matame mishum goylel. Rabbi Yehuda says it's tamei. Rabbi Meir matar. Rabbi Meir says it's tar. It's not. It doesn't make. It sounds like Rabbi Meir's opinion about animals is not just a rabbinic thing. It sounds like he's biblically excluding animals from many of these laws that should be a wall, that it's usable for certain thing. It seems like Reb Meir says biblically that it doesn't have the full the regular rules of a cover of a wall. Hello, I'm Rav Acha Bar Yaakov, Ksavar Reb Meir. So Rav Acha Bar Yaakov says, you know what the reason is? Because Reb Meir holds kol mechitza she'emedes beruach einay mechitza. Reb Meir holds any mechitza that stands in the wind, that stands not in the wind, stands because of with air. In other words, it's filled with oxygen with air. So that is not called a mechitza. We're going to stop here. That's the first explanation. The Gemara soon has another one, but my time is up. Sei gesund, everyone.
All right.
Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi. Have a good day, everybody.